A heartbroken man and a dancer set out on a wild road trip across an arid desert, where they encounter some hostile locals. On an arid desert highway, a man wearing white clothes recites a Gaelic prayer for his god to provide him with a vessel. As he sees a vehicle approaching, he thanks the powers that be for providing. On January 21st, Frank happily drives home as he leaves a phone message to his wife Becky, cheerfully announcing his decision to quit his toxic job and that he's bringing home her favorite wine to celebrate. However, when he arrives outside their house, Frank witnesses his wife cheating on him with another man. Shocked and heartbroken, Frank leaves immediately. A few days ahead, a nurse reads a patient's journal out loud while the unconscious man lays in bed. She gets interrupted by a coworker who mocks her for reading to a comatose person. However, the nurse insists on interacting with the patient because she thinks he can hear her. In the present, Frank stumbles on a seedy rundown club. He peeks inside when a woman calls his attention, asking if he likes what he sees. Frank says he's just passing by, trying to find a road to travel through to find himself. The woman, Penelope, sees that the man needs comfort and pulls him inside the club to dance for him. As the woman dances for Frank, he's mesmerized by her charm and beauty. Penelope sits on Frank's lap after completing her routine, asking if he wants to be with her. She asks him to pay for her drink, so Frank hands over his credit card. When she notices Frank's wedding ring, she expresses disappointment that he isn't available. Frank admits he is married but caught his wife with another man. He mourns Becky's infidelity despite giving his all to their marriage and regrets gifting her his family's heirloom ring. Seeing how lonely the man is, Penelope distracts him from his troubles by taking off his wedding ring with her mouth and making out with him. In the heat of the moment, the woman confesses that she's attracted to Frank, making the man fall for her beautiful words. He asks her if she wants to accompany him on his journey, and Penelope answers with a resounding yes. Penelope sneakily dabs water in her eyes, making Frank believe her sincerity. Suddenly, the club owner calls the dancer to his office, so Frank asks if the owner is her boyfriend, which Penelope denies. In the office, the owner asks if she successfully duped Frank, and the dancer hands over the clueless man's credit card. Penelope asks for a 50-50 cut, but the owner doesn't want to give her more than 20%, especially since she made out with Frank. He demands the dancer compensate him with her body. When she refuses, the owner forces Penelope to her knees. The woman fights back and screams for the man to stop. Frank hears the commotion, so he peeks into the room and sees the owner beating up the dancer. Conflicted, the man nervously thinks through what he's supposed to do. Frank rushes outside and takes deep breaths before his guilt compels him to return inside and break down the office door. He knocks the owner out before checking if the woman is okay. Then, he sees a gun on the desk and picks it up. The owner stands back up and threatens Frank, who retaliates by pointing the gun at the man's forehead. The owner taunts that Frank won't shoot, which the man proves wrong by firing at his hand. Unhinged, Frank demands the owner break up with Penelope, which the man immediately does. Then, Frank asks Penelope if she accepts the man's words, which she vindictively affirms. She grabs the cash, Frank's card, and the owner's PC, the last item as insurance against the owner. Penelope and Frank immediately escape in his car. The owner runs after them and tries to memorize Frank's license plate number. During the escape, Frank apologizes for losing his temper, but Penelope likes the idea of a man raging out, seeing it as an act of someone truly in love. Later, while she sleeps beside him, Frank scribbles in his journal, justifying his action as he thinks Penelope is amazing. When Penelope wakes up, she says she wants to continue their life on the road, which pleases him. With that in mind, they trade Frank's car for a pricier vehicle despite running low on cash. Later, after making love, the woman wakes Frank from his slumber. Consumed by guilt, Penelope confesses that she was planning to steal from him and didn't expect that he would burst in to save her. However, Frank forgives her lies in the club and asks if everything that happened between them after was real. Penelope tells the man she's never felt anything like this before and swears she wants to be with him forever, which is all Frank needs to hear. Elsewhere, Molly sits inside her broken down car, on the verge of a panic attack, when a man in a truck pulls over. She locks her car, frightened by the stranger. The man, Cleve, politely offers to change her flat tire while she stays inside. At first, the frightened lass refuses, but since her phone has no signal, she accepts the man's offer and opens her trunk. He looks inside and sees a spare tire, but lies to the woman about it and instead offers to tow her car to his shop. He puts her in the front seat of his truck as they drive away. Cleve calls from his radio that he's bringing someone in, then starts a creepy conversation with Molly. He starts preaching and touching the woman as she tries her best to keep it together. Scared, Molly turns the radio on, and the sound distracts the man. He removes his hand from her body and excuses himself for acting strange. Meanwhile, the couple is pulled over by a police officer, so they try to hide the money and gun. Penelope uses her charm to flatter the policeman as she and Frank pretend to be siblings. They successfully fool the officer, who warns them that they are about to head to an area that doesn't have a phone signal or a gasoline station for miles. Elsewhere, Cleve and Molly reach the motel where his shop is. The man points Molly to the reception area, where she immediately calls the sheriff, her father, and the same man who pulled Frank and Penelope over moments ago. However, as she's leaving her father a message, Cleve interrupts to check on her and gives her a room key. Suddenly, Mabel, Cleve's wife, enters the room and calls Cleve to be a witness for a client. Later, Mabel speaks with Ophelia, who admits to cheating on her husband. After hearing her tale, Mabel tells the sinner that all the misfortune she experienced after her sin was well deserved, prompting the offended client to leave. Mabel then asks her husband to take care of the sinner with Cookie. Concurrently, Penelope and Frank come across the man in white wanting a ride, but the woman doesn't want to and offers him the sheriff's number instead, which the stranger declines. The couple continues their journey until they reach the motel. They meet Cleve and Cookie, who's dragging a suspiciously heavy bag. Diverting the couple's attention, Cleve immediately offers them a room, deeming them a newlywed couple. They then go to check on their car but are surprised when they see that it's been moved. Cookie says he parked the car closer to their room and even cleaned the windshield. As the couple leaves, Cookie drags the body bag he should have disposed of earlier had the couple not arrived unexpectedly. In his hurry, he doesn't notice a shoe coming off the person's foot. He enters a secret room where another corpse hangs upside down, and he proceeds to cut off the person's leg. That night, Molly comes out of the shower and hears a sound outside. She peeks out her window and sees Cookie carrying the human leg. Shocked by what she saw, the woman immediately closes the curtain. Cookie runs to Cleve for help, informing him that the woman saw him carrying a leg. With no other choice, the motel owner checks on Molly and speaks to her through the door. The woman pretends she didn't witness anything, using a cheerful voice to convince the dubious man. Meanwhile, the couple has a session with Mabel, where the woman goes on a righteous rant about her beliefs. In Frank and Penelope's room, the man in white, Cheese Sauce, rummages through Penelope's bag and learns that she used to work as a dancer. Soon, Cheese Sauce joins the group and introduces himself to the couple. He uses his charm to get to know them better before purposefully touching Frank's finger where his wedding ring is supposed to be. Cheese Sauce then asks if they're honeymooners, and they say they are. However, he warns them that the consequence of lying will come back to bite them when the truth comes out. The curious Frank asks Cheese Sauce what he's doing there, so the man tells them about his grandfather, who owned a mercury mine and used sinners as his workers. However, an accident occurred, and they got trapped inside the mines. Cheese Sauce's grandfather miraculously survived by feeding on the bodies of his sinful workers. Cheese Sauce adds that whenever someone sins, their family continues the tradition of eating those sinners. When he sees that his story spooked the couple, he eases their fears by saying it was a joke. Later, Cheese Sauce tells them that he sold his land for millions, then offers Penelope a chance at his riches if she leaves Frank right now and walks to his car. Immediately, Penelope walks away while the worried Frank calls out to her. Cheese Sauce stops him by saying the woman is a harlot who'll always be tempted by money. Enraged, Frank slams the table and goes to their room. At first, he sees the empty bed and assumes she has left, but to his surprise, Penelope waits for him on the couch. While the happy couple makes love, Cheese Sauce watches them on his surveillance feed. Then, he reviews the day's video feed and sees Molly calling her father, the sheriff, earlier and telling him that Cleve touched her. Cheese Sauce calls Cleve about his actions, but he retorts how Mabel became pregnant when he hasn't slept with her for 3 years, insinuating an affair between Cheese Sauce and his wife. Cheese Sauce ignores his veiled accusation and ends the call. The next day, Mabel checks the phone history, informing their leader that Molly's father is the sheriff who had been calling their motel. Expecting trouble, Cheese Sauce tells the married couple to take care of the problem. Meanwhile, Molly watches Frank and Penelope through the window and rushes into their car, where she hides in the back seat. After finding shiny gems on the ground, Frank kneels and asks for Penelope's hand in marriage. Annoyed, Penelope says he shouldn't joke about such a thing and propose only when he means it. The man apologizes and promises that he'll do it in the future in a more fitting situation. They go to the diner for breakfast, where Frank sees a figurine wearing a military uniform. This reminds him of his father, who passed away when he was a teen. Elsewhere, Mabel and Cleve pretend to be a bickering couple just as the sheriff passes by. When the policeman breaks up the fight, Mabel shoots the cop from behind. At the diner, Penelope tells Frank to take the figurine, which prompts the lady at the counter, Magda, to react negatively. Because of this, Cookie comes out running with a shotgun, making Frank retaliate by pulling his gun out. The two escape and drive away from the motel. Meanwhile, Cheese Sauce appears just in time to see Cookie running out of the diner. After seeing that their targets had turned right, the leader contacts Cleve and Mabel, who are driving back with the sheriff's body. Cleve dons the sheriff's uniform to deceive the couple. This allows Mabel to incapacitate Frank while her husband electrocutes Penelope with a taser. Molly, who's hiding in the back seat, immediately flees after she notices that the criminals have taken the couple. Unfortunately, Mabel shoots her leg, so Cleve captures her easily. When they return to the motel, Cleve dumps Frank in an empty pool littered with corpses, while Penelope is placed in a cell with Cookie standing guard. Cheese Sauce arrives, and Mabel reports their success, so he awards the married woman with a kiss, which Cleve sees from afar. The leader orders Mabel to clean Penelope for him. Angered and jealous, Mabel rudely washes the sleeping woman with a hose. The following day, Cheese Sauce visits Frank in the pool, where the man desperately tries to climb out. Frank's determination to last longer than the rest impresses the preacher. Still, Cheese Sauce says that sooner or later, his intense hunger will cause him to feed on the flesh of the corpses around him. Frank promises to exact revenge if he ever leaves the pit. Later, the man visits Penelope, who refuses to give him what he wants as she's already promised herself to her lover. He questions why she's saving her body for one person when she simply sold it before. In response, the former dancer says she'll never willingly give up her body to anyone except Frank. Defeated, Cheese Sauce leaves and Cleve watches him drive away. That night, Molly wakes up next to her father's corpse in the back seat and screams in terror. She then notices a gun in his boot and takes it. When she looks out the window, she sees Cleve strangling his cheating wife. Cleve spots Molly and slowly walks over, apologizing for all he's done, before allowing the woman to escape. Meanwhile, Penelope finds a large nail in her cell and pockets it. She starts beguiling Cookie when she notices his intense stare. Cookie tries to frighten her by saying that everyone he's touched became damaged, including his wife Magda, who became physically and mentally impaired after he attacked her. Determined, Penelope continuously tempts the man by inflating his ego. Mesmerized, Cookie places a chain around the woman's ankle before he opens the cage. Deftly, Penelope readies the metal weapon in her hand. Meanwhile, Frank wakes up to see Cleve sitting on the pool's edge. Cleve says that he doesn't see Frank as a sinner, so Frank asks him for help, but the man refuses. Instead, Cleve jumps over the edge with a rope around his neck. Shocked, Frank tries to help him, but he can't do much in his position. With no other choice, Frank uses Cleve to climb out of the pool. In the hospital, 4 days in the future, the nurse has fallen asleep while reading the journal. She wakes to the sound of medical personnel trying to revive the patient. As it turns out, the comatose patient is Cleve, and the nurse realizes the owner of the journal is still out there, so she wishes him a wonderful life with his ladylove. In the present, Penelope sits on Cookie's lap, and when he lets his guard down, she stabs him in the eye. Frank comes barging in and bludgeons Cookie to death while Penelope grabs the keys to release her chain. Magda calls Cheese Sauce, who hears the commotion through the phone. Finally free, the couple drives away, but the car stops when the engine stalls. In the middle of the road, Cheese Sauce walks menacingly toward them. After several failed attempts, the engine finally starts, and the couple screams joyfully. Then, they run the man over, relieved that they're leaving the wretched place. Moments later, Molly comes across Cheese Sauce's lifeless body on the road and defiles him. She then shoots him multiple times before leaving. Hours later, Frank and Penelope arrive at his house. She begs him not to go inside, afraid he might change his mind and stay with his wife. Despite her worries, he goes inside to grab something just as another car arrives. Becky's lover exits the vehicle to confront her. Becky tells him to leave while she begs her ex-husband to stay. Frank ignores his ex-wife, but when the other man spews rude comments about Penelope, he snaps and beats him mercilessly. He then drives away with his lover, leaving his crying ex-wife behind. Later, Frank shows Penelope his family heirloom ring to propose to her, and the elated woman accepts. Meanwhile, the club owner spots them and plans his revenge on the happy couple.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.